Most people are trapped in expensive habits they don't even realize are costing them tens of thousands of dollars per year. So in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through 5 categories of spend and show you ways that you can make your dollar stretch further in each. That way you can literally double how far your money goes. Starting with the first category, it's housing. So housing is one of these categories where you're probably gonna spend the majority of your monthly recurring expenses on. Everyone needs a place to live, and the cost of renting and the cost of mortgages these days is very high. Now, there are some things you can do to get more value out of housing, and it doesn't involve just moving to a cheaper place. The first principle I'd focus on is getting more value out of your square footage. That means picking neighborhoods that might offer great perks. So perhaps there's a park nearby, a library, or an outdoor gym, or maybe it just has a high walkability score. According to a study on neighborhoods at the American Enterprise Institute, quote, people who live in proximity to neighborhood amenities are happier, more socially connected, and more inclined to help others compared to those who live in low amenity areas. Amenities here could be in reference to anything like a park, a library, a grocery store, a gym, a bar, a restaurant, etc. And being close to these amenities actually translates to a dollar amount. The article goes on to state that in a study of nearly 100,000 home sales, walkability was linked to higher home values in 13 of 15 US metro areas. And that, quote, a nationwide analysis in 2018 found a walkability premium in property values, which was equal to an additional $28,000 on a $200,000 home. The second way you can stretch your dollar out further based on your living situation is by reducing your commute time. Now, according to this Inc. article, adding just 20 minutes of your commute makes you as miserable as getting a 19% pay cut. That means if you have a commute of 40 minutes instead of 20 minutes to get to your job, and you earn $100,000 per year, it could equate to $19,000 worth of pay. Quote, the study found commuters who walk or bike to work don't report the same dissatisfaction with their leisure time as those who commute by bus or train. All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. I do agree that I think commuting by walking or biking just is a lot better than, say, sitting in mind-bending traffic. I also think that if your walk is really pleasant, like you're walking through beautiful neighborhoods or you're going through your city that gives you inspiration, that could actually bring you fulfillment. But in the more traditional sense of commuting, like sitting on trains or sitting in traffic, I do think that it can cost you a dollar amount of happiness. You can argue with me whether it's actually worth 19% of your salary or not. The number is somewhat subjective, but I do think that commuting can have a cost on your overall satisfaction. I had an internship in college, for example, that paid me $18 per hour, and I remember having to commute an hour and 20 minutes each way to this internship, and I just absolutely hated it. At the time, I didn't really have any other job options, so I just kind of stuck it out. However, these days, if you were to ask me to commute an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes just to get somewhere on a daily basis, I would definitely factor that into any decision I have to make regarding a potential job or housing. The third way to stretch your money further in the housing category is to design your space to feel premium, and that could mean lighting, layout, or maybe just decluttering your place. Sometimes I am surprised at how bad my friends' layouts are in their own homes. So if you're able to optimize your furniture to create better overall flow, or maybe just remove one piece of oversized furniture, it could make your place feel way bigger and more functional. One tip I have for you here is that you can take a picture of your current layout, upload it to ChatGPT, and just ask it to optimize it for you. In general, I feel like Chat can actually come up with some great tips on how you can maximize the square footage that you do have. So with some thoughtfulness around housing, you can definitely use the space that you have and the area that you have to maximize your satisfaction and the value per dollar spent. The next biggest category people tend to spend a lot of money on is transportation. So I want you guys to take a look at this chart from AAA from their report on how much it really costs to own a car. These numbers are the average cost for 5 top selling models in each category. So if you're someone who drives a half-ton pickup truck, on average, you are going to be spending $1.10 per mile in the form of depreciation plus fuel plus financing costs and insurance and maintenance. That means if you are somebody who opts for, let's say, a small sedan or a hybrid or even a subcompact SUV, you are literally saving 40 to 45% on every single mile that you drive. You want to pick a car with historically low maintenance costs plus high reliability scores. So I would probably think of models like the Toyota Corolla or the Honda Civic. If you want to link to this full report, I will link it down below, and then that way you can see all the full breakdowns of every single type of car. Another way to stretch your dollar in the automobile category is to at least try to get quotes from other insurance providers. According to a 2019 study, Americans are overpaying for insurance by nearly $37 billion per year, and that study was conducted 6 years ago. I'd have to imagine that these days that figure has probably ballooned quite a bit, and according to the article, Americans are overpaying for auto insurance by an average of $330. So what you want to do is just compare quotes with other insurance providers. Also make sure that you're not overpaying for the type of coverage you already do have. Now, when it comes to buying a new car versus a used car, I want you to take a look at the depreciation curve of whatever you're trying to buy. For example, if you were to Google, let's say, a Maserati's depreciation curve, you might find that it is one of the worst culprits out there. $100,000 spent on a 2014 Maserati Quattroporte was worth less than $45,000 after 4 years of use, and that is some crazy depreciation. So take some time to study car depreciation curves. Different cars are going to have different curves, but if you are buying a car, the sweet spot to buy a car is somewhere in the 3 to 5 year used range. That's when most of the depreciation has been chipped away already, but the car is still new enough so that it's not exactly a problem car that you're gonna have to spend a ton of money on repairs on. If you wanna save money when it comes to cars, I think it makes a lot of sense to buy a car that has, let's say, around 30,000 miles, and that's about 3 years used. In that way, you will get a great deal, save a lot of money on your total cost of ownership, and just have a pretty new car. When you combine all these tactics and also with better choices around what you buy when it comes to transportation, I think that it can help you save a lot of money in this category. Okay, the next category is food. So the average American household spends approximately $9,985 per year on food as of the latest data. That breaks down to around $832 per month, which is further broken out by $504 on groceries per month and $328 on food out of the household. Food's a really expensive expense, and we all need food to survive, and so there are going to be some ways that you can save a lot of money on your food expenses. The first is just to plan ahead. I know that it sounds really simple, but many people just don't plan their meals ahead of time. So that means when you go to the grocery store, hopefully you're not going to the grocery store, number one, hungry, because it's probably one of the worst things that you can do. But also you want to have somewhat of a plan to figure out what you're going to eat throughout the week. If you're able to go to a grocery store on a Sunday night, for example, and say, all right, Monday, I'm gonna eat this, Tuesday, I'm gonna eat this, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I have these meals planned. At least you have some idea of how much money in total that all your meals are gonna cost. The situation where you don't wanna find yourself in is that when you don't have anything planned at all for meals and you don't have any more food left in the fridge, you're gonna go on DoorDash and just say, all right, well, I'm really hungry right now. Let me just DoorDash, I don't know, this Mediterranean food for $35. Planning ahead here will help you reduce these impulsive food purchases and these random DoorDash nights. Also, when it comes to the amount of money that you're spending on food, you want to look at all the types of food that you are buying and see what takes up the bulk portion of your spend. For example, if you are noticing that you are spending a lot of money on nice cuts of meat like filet mignons, or perhaps you're eating a lot of shrimp, maybe you want to switch out those protein sources for a comparable protein like chicken, which is a lot cheaper, arguably healthier, and still gets you to those protein goals. Oftentimes, protein will be the most expensive type of food that you buy, so it's important to look at what you are buying and seeing if there are any substitutes. Of course, you could also go vegetarian or vegan, but I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying, look at what is costing you a lot of money within your food bill and see what you can do about it. The same goes with brand names. So I like to go with generic brands over brand names, and I find that usually generic brands can help you save close to 50% on whatever you are buying. Oftentimes they will taste pretty similar, and I even prefer some generic brands over brand names. Lastly, the one place where I feel like people spend a ton of money is when they do go out to eat. People like to get a little bit crazy in this category. Perhaps if you've been sitting at home for the last 6 days of the week, that one night you go out to dinner, you say to yourself, man, well, I really deserve all of this because I've been disciplined all week. I'm gonna go treat myself. So what ends up happening is you order 3 cocktails, a few appetizers, some entrees, as well as a big dessert. And 2 hours later, you've basically sabotaged your entire week's worth of discipline with that one dinner. Not only in terms of caloric content, but also financially. I'm not saying you can't have fun or indulge a little bit, but you wanna consider some ways to cut costs before you go out to eat. So that means you might just have a beer at home instead of having 3 cocktails at dinner, which are really overpriced. So just be reasonable with your expenses, and I think that will help a lot when it comes to the food category. Now, the next category that I think you can save a lot of money in and actually stretch out your dollar even further is entertainment. This is one of my favorite categories to talk about because there are so many different types of entertainment, and each type of entertainment will have a different cost associated with it. For example, if you really enjoy attending Formula One events, that's going to be way more expensive than, say, if you enjoy playing League of Legends for free online on a Friday night, raging at your teammates because they weren't watching the minimap and they get killed out of a silly mistake. That happens a lot, and yes, I do find it fun. Another category of entertainment that's gotten really expensive in the past few years has been movies and concerts. You can see that with this graphic that's seasonally adjusted, the inflation for these types of entertainment have gone way up in recent years. This is pretty evidenced by any concert you want to go to these days. I used to remember that I could spend $50 on a concert, and these days a premium artist like Ed Sheeran, for example, he might be $175 for nosebleeds and $450 for a ticket on the floor. So I have a few tips for you here in the entertainment category. The first is to make sure you are distinguishing between experiences and expenses, because I think some of the best experiences in life are actually going to be really cheap or they are free. Hiking, game nights with friends, exploring your own city, or maybe even reading books from your local library, these are all relatively inexpensive. I also think that as long as you're with some friends that you enjoy, generally I find that I have a better time. So there's actually a study that shows that in almost all countries, people who often spend time with their friends report to be happier than those who spend less time with their friends. Go figure. The second thing I would think about is the cost per hour framework of entertainment. So if you're going to be spending, let's say $50 on League of Legends skins, but it's going to give you 100 hours of entertainment, that equals about 50 cents per hour. Versus if you go to a Taylor Swift concert for $1,000, that's $333 per hour that you are spending to be at that concert. I don't think either is better than the other, but just understanding the value per hour that you are spending, at least when it comes to your entertainment, will help you make better and more intentional decisions. And third, maybe you can find some hobbies that actually pay you back in the future. So for example, if you got into woodworking, perhaps you enjoy making things and then you can eventually sell them. Or perhaps you invest $500 to $1,000 in cooking classes, and then therefore you can even save more money throughout the rest of your life because you know how to cook really well. These are just examples of things you can do for entertainment, but also can make you money or save you money way later. And the fifth category in which you can stretch your dollar out a bit further are subscriptions. Americans spend over $200 on unused subscriptions every single year. The average millennial spends about $1,200 in subscriptions every year as well, which is $100 per month. There's not really a great way to stretch your dollar out further in this category, but what this category is more about is figuring out how you can cut subscriptions without reducing your overall quality of life. The first exercise I offer to you is to pull up your credit card statements and count every single recurring charge. I will venture out and say you might even have 2 or 3 subscriptions that you forgot that you were even paying for. Since the average person now has 12 subscriptions or more, that's just a lot to keep track of unless you are actively thinking about canceling the ones that you don't use. The framework that you should be using when you think about a subscription is the following. So take the amount that you are spending on it every single month and think to yourself, does my use of this subscription justify the monthly cost? Every subscription should justify itself on a monthly basis and provide clear value. And if not, I think you should cancel it. You can always resubscribe to these things, and that's the funny thing. I think people often forget that they can cancel and resubscribe anytime. They just are pretty lazy about it. All right, let me know what you guys thought of these tactics in today's video. I would love to hear from you and also learn any tactics that you might have to share as well. If you enjoyed this video and your time with me, check out this video right here on the 10 things that I stopped buying. In that video, I tell you all about the 10 things that I just can't pay for anymore on my own. I'll see you guys in that video or a future one on this channel. Thank you for being here again, and I hope you have a happy holidays. Peace.